for you this lesson from Unity of the Keys Spiritual Center.
Before going into the talk, I'd like to play a piece of music. This is called Benediction of Light. And I see it as just an opportunity to send out from our hearts a blessing into our world for peace, for understanding, for harmony among the nations and with each other, with this beautiful planet, with the animals. So this is Benediction of Light, an original piece of music. And thank you all for joining together and letting the music take us all on an inner journey as we radiate into the infinite web of relations. Blessing of light on this beautiful morning. Enjoy. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. So it's great to be back in Unity here in Key West in the Keys. And we, as you said, Lori, Madeline and I have been coming here for a long time. How many of you were here when the building was on Flagler? Some of you? Yeah, some. How many of you were here when the building was on Duck Avenue? All right, 2, 3, 4. All right, good. So, great. Yeah, we go way back to, I think, 1990, and quite a few years it was on Duck Avenue, then moved to Flagler, and now we're here. And we've known Evelyn Casper for so long, and we always spent at least a month with our RV at her land on Big Pine Key for many, many years. And so I was so grateful to get from Lori this morning the book of her prayers. We were in prayer with her so much out there, and her spirit is still right here, I'm sure. And it's a spirit really, it's not a personal spirit. I mean, it's her being, her unique individual being. But I think beyond that, there's the spirit of unity, the unity spirit, which is really the core of all the world religious traditions. It's the spirit of loving kindness, of compassion, of understanding, wisdom, that there's one life that lives through us, and as we connect with that, we begin to connect with the power of healing. I love that this is the month of strength. This is what strength is all about, I think. It's this connection to something beyond our personal little self. And so Madeline and I are really grateful that we've been able to travel so much to Unity churches. Now we've been doing this we're in our 4th decade, and I think we've probably been to, at this point, more Unity churches than any human being in history. We lived in an RV for 17 years, every Sunday at a Unity church, and still, for the last 12 years since we left the RV, we're on the road over half the year. And we love Unity because I think, in many ways, it's one of the healthiest spiritual movements in the world, because it's really based on this underlying truth of inclusivity, radical inclusion, including not only everyone is welcome here, but also including all the wisdom of the world's spiritual traditions. We don't have this kind of narrow thing like we have the one right answer, and if you just get to believe what we say, you'll get to go to the heaven that's for us. You know, this kind of idea that causes a lot of division. So Unity really emphasizes this idea that there's tremendous wisdom in all the traditions. And Charles Fillmore is famous for his saying that each one of us should go straight to headquarters. You remember that? And for him, it was easy. He could just ask Myrtle what to do. But for the rest of us, the idea is each one of us can go and connect directly with our own source of wisdom. And that's what we'll be talking about a little bit this afternoon, our intuition. Charles and Myrtle Fillmore emphasized the power of intuition. And this is this inner wisdom that we all have. And it's really based, I think, and I'll talk about this afternoon, on the sacred feminine capacity of receptivity. Because the main point, I think, to understand is that all of us have been born in this society, and in many ways we've been somewhat wounded by the experience. There's a great saying by Krishnamurti. He says, it's not a good idea to be well-adjusted to a profoundly sick society, right? So it's important for us to be able to question the official narratives in our society, and especially those that lead to domination and exploitation of the weak by the strong, and the conflict and so forth. And I think if you found your way through this door and you're here, you've already questioning these official narratives. And I think the reason that intuition is so important, and it really is the key in many ways to spirituality, is because it's based on the truth that what we are is not this physical body. This underlying idea that we're this thing that was born and will die, an object, has a name and a form, that creates enormous conflict and disease and all kinds of problems. And the whole idea, really, with Unity and the world religious traditions is that we are what makes this physical appearance possible. We are eternal consciousness. If we go to, like Madeline and I yesterday, we just got here yesterday, and we went to Zachary Taylor, and I just found out from Kevin that there's a lot of new sand there, which is really nice. But if we're walking along the beach and we see a footprint, we don't go up to the footprint and say, "How are you doing, Harriet? How are you doing today?" You know that the footprint is not the being who made the footprint. And this is a footprint waving to you, right? Our physical body, in many ways, is like a footprint. This is an ancient spiritual symbol of a human being, is the footprint, that we are the visible manifestation of a non-corporeal essence of being. And this was something that I know Evelyn Casper really talked a lot about and thought a lot about. We are the life that makes this outer appearance possible. But the thing is, when we're born here, we're like a little sponge, right? So we just soak up all of the attitudes. Their food becomes my food. Their attitudes become my attitudes. Their way of thinking becomes my way of thinking. And so we go through our whole life, and we, if we're not careful, we become pretty automatic as just fulfilling and being propelled by the narratives in our society, the narratives from the Walmart ads on TV and all the program we've gotten growing up in school, and what all the ministers say. And I don't mean Reverend Dabry and Evelyn, but the other ministers, what they all told us. All this programming that is in us, and we're just basically fulfilling that. So then it's just conditioned living. We can be going to church every Sunday and all that, but there's really no spirituality in that. So spirituality really begins when we connect with the eternal dimension of consciousness and let that guide us. Then we're being guided by our true nature. And this is really what we're talking about with intuition. It doesn't mean our life is suddenly easy and we don't have any problems. We still have challenges. But the beautiful thing is we're living our life and not somebody else's life. And there's an underlying feeling of joy when that happens, a bubbling spring of joy that's always available, it's always present. We can kind of get a feeling for it when we look at Madeline's paintings. We see these animals and we see the nature and the beauty. But I think we look beyond the surface. We see there's a tremendous, loving, joyful energy that is at the core of really authentic spirituality and in art, I would say, as well, in music. And to connect with that is so important. Each one of us has our unique way of accessing our intuition and our inner genius, our inner wisdom, and sharing that with the rest of the world. So I'd like to just close here, I have just a few more minutes, with this idea that we each have our own unique journey. And some of you may have heard me talk about this, but I'll just say it briefly. I was born and raised in Concord, Massachusetts, back in the 1950s, and it was a neat place to be raised and grow up because of the transcendentalist movement that was there. I learned to swim in Walden Pond. I went to Thoreau School and Alcott School. I was born in Emerson Hospital. And so these folks, these men and women both, were really pioneers, and they were the first ones to bring a lot of the teachings of Asia into North America and into the predominantly Western philosophical tradition, and enriching in many ways the tradition with ideas, for example, like from the Taoist tradition of God as an infinite eternal principle that we can actually understand and live in harmony with. And the idea from the Buddhist tradition of God as this infinite mind with a capital M that is our own mind when we quiet our minds. How many of you have a regular meditation or spiritual practice that you do on a daily basis? That's wonderful. Thank you. That's so important. So this is really these ideas from ancient traditions that we can practice. Connecting with our inner wisdom, we can practice quieting our mind, letting it merge with the larger mind, and that as we do that, our life can be transformed. This is the essence in many ways of unity, is that there's a being that is beyond just the little being that we think we are, and we are that being. The idea also from the Hindu tradition, for example, of God as equally female as male, so bringing in the power not only of action, but of receptivity and opening to a higher wisdom. So I remember when I went away to college in Maine, I started to read these books, and it led me on a spiritual kind of quest. And I heard about a book named by a man named Dr. Richard Buck. He wrote a book called Cosmic Consciousness. Have you ever heard of that book, Cosmic Consciousness? It's an old book from the 1890s. Anyway, the main point I just want to share here is that he said that most human beings live at the level of self-consciousness. We have a self. He said animals are at the level of what he called simple consciousness. They don't have this sort of ego like we have. But he said a few people, rare individuals, attained what he calls cosmic consciousness, and people like Jesus and the Buddha, and he gave a number of examples of great sages and saints and mystics and poets. and seers, both men and women through the ages, who had made a leap, a qualitative leap to a higher level of consciousness where they lost this sense of being separate and trying to get for themselves and keep away and sort of be in a continual struggle with others doing the same thing, which is pretty much the human condition. And he said, it is the destiny of every human being to attain cosmic consciousness. That's really our purpose here, is to get beyond the delusion of being a separate self that's always in sort of using others as instruments to achieve our goals, and to have this underlying sense of oneness with other expressions of life. And he said it was a moral elevation, an intellectual illumination, a spiritual resurrection, really, that we can go through. And so I remember reading about this and feeling that it would be such a shame and a distraction if I just took over my father's business. He had a whole chain of newspapers in the Concord, Massachusetts area. And so I remember going home on the breaks and talking to my parents and saying, you know, Mom and Dad, you know about cosmic consciousness, right? We're not here just to work and do things. We're here to attain a higher level of awareness. And my father said, yeah, this education of yours is costing me quite a lot of money, actually. And how's that going to help you really get ahead in the world? But he somewhat understood, and my mother also. My mother was an artist. My father he taught me to play the piano. So right after I graduated from college, I was talking to my brother about this, my younger brother Ed, and to my delight, he said, yes, let's attain cosmic consciousness. And so my parents said, so what are you going to do? How are you going to do that? And we thought about it quite a bit, and then we couldn't think what we should do. And then we thought, yeah, we know what to do. We'll go to California. That's got to happen, 1975. So we decided to head to California and just walk there with no money all the way to California, like the sadhus of India, meditate and attain cosmic consciousness. Hopefully we would find a spiritual teacher along the way. So we headed out with some fresh baked cookies from my mother down the driveway and heading west to get to San Francisco, and we got as far as Buffalo after a few weeks. And then we started walking south because it was getting cold. It was October, and we decided to forget all that and just try to stay ahead of the cold front. And we were walking, and we were doing this practice by Ramana Maharshi, a sage from India, who recommended to go deeper with a practice he called self-inquiry, to go deeper and deeper with the question of who am I, or what am I? What is this that I think I am? And that's a very powerful practice. And so more and more we began to let go of things, let go of needs and desires and possessions. And because if you have to carry it, pretty soon you don't need it. And we worked our way down through upstate New York, Pennsylvania, all the way across Pennsylvania, all the way across West Virginia. When we got into West Virginia, they said, boys, you're on the Bible Belt. And we found out what that meant pretty soon. And they tried to save us every night. But we kept going into eastern Kentucky, into Appalachia, down into Tennessee. And we ended up eventually at a community in Tennessee, south of Nashville, called The Farm. And The Farm in 1975 was the largest hippie commune in the world back then. And they were pretty much all from California, 900 people, mostly from California. And so we felt like we kind of met them halfway. And they were basically studying Zen, meditation practice. And they were all vegetarians. And so I've never eaten meat in my life since that day I met. I was talking to these people at The Farm. And Madeline, actually, my wife, we've been happily married now in our 34th year. And she also, at the same month and year, decided to never eat meat in her life again as well. And my brother and I eventually continued down into Alabama because we heard about a Zen center down in Huntsville. And we ended up living there and then eventually out in California. So just to kind of wrap this up, I ended up eventually being a Zen Buddhist monk in Korea, like we heard, and focusing a lot on just quieting the mind and to directly experience the sky of awareness, the pure, unimpeded awareness that is our true nature. And I think to the degree that we can get a glimpse of this, we can realize that we are so blessed. And when I discovered, actually, through all this process, the unity teachings, I realized that unity, Charles and Myrtle Fillmore, are such a pure channel of teaching and an example that's really beautifully created, not from the ancient wisdom traditions for our time. And so it's been fantastic. Even though I got a PhD at Berkeley and I taught college for a number of years, it just felt right to, in a sense, leave all that and come into this unity movement and share here, because I think this movement is so precious. It really inspires us at such a profound level that we can heal all the, not only the physical problems that we're having, but the psychological and spiritual dimension as well, once we realize our true nature, get a glimpse of that when we quiet our mind and let go of the contraction around being this self that we think we are. So I want to just close and thank all of you for the efforts that you're making. No effort we make is ever lost. And remember the power of community. You know, there's a great teaching in the Buddhist tradition. There's the 3 jewels, which are the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. So the Buddha represents the inner, what we would call the inner Christ, our eternal essence. The Dharma is the teachings that help us to connect with that, awaken to that. And so we have the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha is the community of people who are interested in awakening the Buddha nature, the inner Christ, and following the teachings and propagating the teachings. And so it's very important, I think, because the Buddha said, without the Sangha, there will be no Buddha and there will be no Dharma. So it's really the Sangha, this community, is a critical aspect of awakening. And so I think coming to this earth, being able to somehow see through the many layers of delusion and ignorance and so forth that are propagated through the media and through all the institutions in our society, to reconnect with our spirituality, and then to create a community that is authentically encouraging and enthusiastically understanding the teachings, and then to do our best to support that community and do our own inner work, these inner and outer, is to live a life well lived. And that's a fantastic thing, because we're only here for a few short decades. That's very important. I remember listening to a woman who gave an interview. She was the oldest living human being, a 119-year-old Japanese woman. They said, "What's it like? Now you're 119. And she said, "It goes by very fast." So remember, every day is precious. If we can just wake up and remember our life is precious. We have another day, another opportunity to learn and grow, to remember our true nature, and to contribute to the healing and awakening of humanity. We will have lived our life well. So much love to all of you. Thank you all so much. A big thank you to my wonderful wife, Madeline, to each and every one of you, to Evelyn, and to the Spirit of Unity, because we are essentially one life living through many expressions. Thanks very much, everyone. Thank you. Thank you.